Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number CL4040-7-603. This is a large single-acting spring hinge, and the 4040 is a special kind of spring hinge in that when it arrives to you, it's probably going to look like this. There's tension already set on these leaves. It's pre-set tension, even though you can adjust that. The tension is indeed preset with this type of hinge. This is a 4040 hinge, except that it's a CL hinge, which means it has these decorative tips. If you are a tourist in New York City, it's not a matter of if you will see these, but a matter of how many of these you will see. They're everywhere in the hotels, all through Manhattan, especially those obviously that were built 100 years ago, you know, that sort of range. You will see these hinges everywhere there. To be sure. Now, the 4040 is a single-acting spring hinge. They're going to talk about it being non-template. That means that the holes for the screws are just where Bommer puts them for this hinge, for the 4040. But it's where they put them for the -7. The 7 is the size. They make this in other sizes. And then again, it's the CL decorative ball tip. If you drop the CL, you'll just get like what they would call a cap that would be here. Too big to be a button tip, but it would just be a cap. Tension collar is here with the tension pin already installed, giving us tension. There's a roll pin that is installed here, and then after you get installation done, you'll pull that roll pin out. I'd probably recommend keeping the roll pin should you want to use it in the future. This is in a 603 finish. That means two things. It means it's made of steel, and that it is in a zinc plated finish. If you're looking for a silver type color, a chrome type color, 603, this zinc color, will prove to be the least expensive version of any sort of chrome. You could also order the 652, which would be satin chrome, or 651, which would be polished chrome. Both of those are platings over steel. But if you're not too particular, you'll notice the 603 is a lot less expensive than 651 or 652. So be mindful of that. This would be the poor man's polished chrome. And I would use it certainly all the time myself. Okay. Now, this is listed for use on fire doors. The labeling is there. According to NFPA 80, hinges must be labeled for use on fire doors. It's not an option. If your hinge does not have a stamp on there that indicates it's a UL listed product, you don't have a fire rated approved hinge. So be mindful of that. This is also going to include a tension rod. For every order you place, you'll get at least one tension rod. And then it will include screws, which will be in a complementary finish. You know, they have... This is an important thing to be mindful of. You know, they've got 5 wood screws in here, and they have all machine screws. So it's half wood screws and all machine screws. At the time of order, indicate in the comment field what screws you want. You know, could you have a wood door and a wood frame? Absolutely. It's probably what you have. Apartment buildings in New York full of these. And you have no need for machine screws at all. In addition, this client, while I know that they don't have a wood door and a wood frame, would ultimately end up getting an insufficient quantity of the right screws. That's a number 12 by 1.25 inch threaded to the head, flathead Phillips drive steel-based sheet metal screw. And then the machine screws are 12-24 flat undercut head. They might even be thread forming. Yeah, they're thread forming. That's a reference to the tip of the screw that you can kind of see there. Little lines cut in it so that it can clear the paint that would collect in the tapped holes of the reinforcements of a hollow metal frame. So that's what that is. Number 12 by 1/2 inch Phillips drive. Number 2 is what that is, even though screws are generally a number 3. Yeah, that's going to need to be a number 3 on there. Okay. Let's switch to the screen view and take a closer look at the supporting documentation. But we're going to talk in a moment about this tension rod going into this tension collar and us turning it clockwise. Okay. And as we do so, we reveal a new additional hole. You'll turn it clockwise to increase tension when the tension collar is pointed towards the top of the door. You'll notice there's not one down here. So let's switch to the screen view and take a closer look at some of this supporting documentation. Okay, so here's the item that we're looking at, CL4040-7. Now in the CL4040-7, there's going to be different finishes that we have listed here. 600 for prime coat, 601, that's bright black Japan. 603 is our zinc plated. 639 satin bronze, 640 oil rub bronze, 645 is a polished nickel. 652 is that satin chrome. Other finishes can be done as well. On the 651 is not listed as a polished chrome, but that can certainly be done. And other variations. You know, if it's a finish that can be done on steel, it's likely Bomber can emulate the finish because they can produce in their plating plant over 30 unique finishes, dependent on base material. So our CL4040-7 603, as we scroll down, we're going to see the extended description information and then our supporting documents. So let's take a closer look. Easily adjustable spring tension. Pivot points do not align with standard full mortise hinges, meaning you cannot mix and match this hinge with anything else. You have to use only this hinge on your door, so be mindful of that. It is UL listed. It's UL labeled. It's got the stamp on the leaf, and it also is listed for fire door applications, meaning it's been tested, and there's a certification of that test and a testament to the fact that it passed the fire test on file at the UL laboratory. It's a grade 1 hinge, which means it has been tested and found acceptable to at least 1 million cycles. Who knows how many cycles this hinge could go to, but it's been found compliant with the most stringent for cycle test that BHMA has. Factory set spring tension. It's already set at the factory. It's preloaded. Non-template hole pattern and non-handed. You can install this on left-hand doors, right-hand doors. Classic ball tip, made of steel. Now the 4040-7 would be appropriate for a 2-inch thick door, something a little thicker. You know, could you force this onto an 1 3/4 thick door? You could. You probably want the 6-inch size. You know, the size of the hinge and the thickness of the door and the size of the door, it all goes together. And in a general rule of thumb type approach, if you're looking at a 2-inch door thickness, you're probably looking at a 7-inch. Maximum door weight, 3 hinges at 175 pounds, so you can see it'll handle a lot of weight. If your door is closer to 130 pounds, go with 2. And then also on door widths, you can't exceed 4 foot on this, but when you're using 3 hinges and 3'6" for 2 hinges, but NFPA 80 is going to limit us to a 3070 size door if it's a fire-rated door, and that is actually indicated here and in NFPA 80, which is a standard, and if your local code has adopted NFPA 80 into the code, it becomes code. And NFPA 80, the standard says 3070 is the largest leaf size that you can use spring hinges on. Otherwise, you need to use an alternate means of closing the door. Also, it says NFPA 80 that you have to have at least 2 spring hinges on a door. Non-labeled doors, have at it. Bomber has tested this to 4 foot, and the height, they're saying for every 90 inches, for every 30 inch after 90 inch, add another spring hinge, is what they're saying. Now, supporting documentation here. Let's look at the template first. This is a drawing of the hinge, important only to allow you to understand what you're dealing with, and I can tell you that the hinge on my desk matches the 7-inch, the locations of the holes. So if you're unsure if this is the hinge you need, use this as a guide, and a tape measure, obviously. Okay. Four and a half inch overall width. Sure, yeah, you can definitely force this onto an 1 3/4 thick door. They say the leaf thickness in the upper right-hand corner is 114 thousandths. My caliper tells me it's 0.123 or 122, so a little heavy on that. Now, the next document we should take a look at is going to be the instructions. This is going to be literally included in your shipment. The instructions will be in the box. If they're not, here they are. So this hinge can be used on non-handed, on either left or right-hand doors. The fixed collar can be identified by the tension pin in the collar to hold the tension hold the hinge open while installing the hinge to the door and frame. So what they're driving at is, when you need to install this, I had said also that you're going to pull that roll pin out and you might want to keep it to use it later. I have a client who needs to replace one of these and he can't figure out how to get the hinge removed from the door and frame without snapping his fingers shut, because you can't completely eliminate the tension on the hinge. So you need to insert the roll pin back into the hinge barrel to then keep the door ajar to this sort of degree. So whether you are removing or installing, the hinge is literally installed in this orientation, just open enough so that you have access with your screwdriver to be able to get it to the heads of the screws. And once you have the hinge thoroughly secured is when you'll pull that roll pin out. But should you ever need to remove that, you're going to want something stuck down in there, such as the original roll pin, to keep the hinge in the partially ajar position so that you can get your screwdriver to the head of the screws. And the door would actually be further open than what is being shown there. That looks like it's about 30 degree. Our hinge is actually going to be closer to probably 70 degree. So you would actually have just enough access to get your screwdriver to these leads. Do not try to close the door while the roll pin is in position, is in the barrel. You'll need to remove that first. This hinge is designed to be fastened to the door and frame under preset condition, and do not remove the tension pin. The tension pin is that pin in the collar, which they're not showing us here. The roll pin is the one in the barrel. Now, once you have the unit completely secured, that's when you can then remove what they're calling a tension pin. The tension pin, again, is in the tension collar. It's the silver item up at the top that I demonstrated earlier. The roll pin is the steel gray-colored item that you would remove from the barrel. After you've got it installed, pull that roll pin. Then you can increase your tension. Okay. If additional tension is required, put tension rod into tension collar and turn 1 or 2 holes further as shown. And they're showing you from a top view down how they want you to rotate the tension collar. Left-hand doors, they want you to turn that tension rod clockwise, then counterclockwise for right-hand doors. So that's how you install these. So it's when it comes to you in this unusual orientation where it's partially propped open with that roll pin, yep, that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now, product catalog. This is just going to be a quick journey into the 4040 and its sister products. And namely what happens is, as the part number changes, the shape and design of the hinge change as well. They're going to be immediately identifiable by and what they're showing us here is the different hinges that they have, a 4010, a 4020, and then the ball tip version. And what you'll notice on here is the 4010, that can be done in a -7. Well, if you study what the 4010 looks like, and we come down to the 4040, they kind of look the same. Well, in fact, they do look the same. There's a 4040-7. That's the hinge we're kind of looking at. The difference is that the 10 and the 20 versions are not UL listed. So if you have a fire door, you're going to be needing to look at the 30 and the 40 version of these hinges. Okay. As a result, you can do a reverse spring hinge on these non-UL listed products, but not on the standard fire-rated products. Okay. That's your product catalog. It's not immediately obvious, but it is when you study it and divide out what the differences are, that one is UL listed and the other is not. Okay, now let's take a look here, see if there's anything we've missed. Okay, we have caught it all. So there is a link here below this video to the manufacturer's page, where when we click on that, This page will load, and that will allow you to review not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog, as well as other encyclopedic documents. Bommer, once upon a time and for many decades, manufactured postal specialties, which they discontinued in 2019 or thereabouts. So if you run into a Bommer mailbox and you are curious to learn more about it, here's everything that I have regarding it. And that catalog's probably 20 years old at this point, so it would probably be quite appropriate in terms of using it as a research resource. The Bommer catalog is exceptionally comprehensive when it comes to all things spring hinge related. Bommer, in fact, invented the product category and started the company, the two brothers Bommer, in 1876. So when it comes to single and double acting spring hinge products, you can very likely rest assured that Bommer manufactures a compatible product. Their most common spring hinge is the 3029 series, and it's really impossible to have spent any time in society at all without indirectly or directly bumping into one of these hinges, and maybe just not realizing it. But a double-acting hinge like this you'd see in a door in a restaurant between the kitchen and the seating area. Very typical, very common application for that material. A great trip down the lane of tell me everything that's available in a spring-assisted product for hinges on doors. This catalog would be the comprehensive source. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So installation is simple and straightforward. Once you understand, yes, this is exactly how you're going to install that product. And, you know, this is one of those hinges from Bommer that it pays to read the installation instructions first. Everything that they sell, you need to read the installation instructions first, at least in my opinion. Some of it I'm so familiar with that, you know, I don't refer to the document much. But nonetheless, it would be helpful on this item. The last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo. Right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer CL4040-7 or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.